Today, we're diving into a study that could, and I mean really could, change how we fight one of the world's deadliest diseases. We're talking about the pancreatic cancer predictor.
Let's just start with one pretty sobering number: 10%. According to the research, that is the 5-year relative survival rate for pancreatic cancer. It's incredibly low, and it really just sets the stakes for why this is so important.
So why is it so deadly? Well, it really boils down to one thing. It's a silent killer. The main reason is that it's usually found way too late. By the time you even have symptoms, the cancer is often in its advanced stages, and that makes treatment just incredibly difficult.
But what if you could change that? What if a simple blood test could give you a warning sign, not just early, but years, literally years, before the cancer becomes a major problem? That is the incredible promise at the heart of the research we're breaking down today.
Okay, so let's get into it. First up, we need to understand the nature of the disease itself and where this hidden opportunity for detection really lies.
Now get this. This is a crucial detail from the study. This cancer doesn't just pop up overnight. On average, it takes almost 12 years, 11.7 years, to go from the very first spark to the dangerous invasive stages. That is a massive window of opportunity. It means, in theory, there's plenty of time to catch it, if only we knew what to look for.
So, that leads to the next big question, right? How in the world do you find those early warning signs? Well, this next part is all about the incredibly clever way these scientists went on a hunt for clues hidden deep inside our blood.
The researchers were thorough. They analyzed blood samples from 2 massive groups of people, one in China and one in the UK. But here's the brilliant part. These blood samples were taken years, sometimes decades, before some of these people were diagnosed with cancer. That's what makes this whole thing so powerful. They had a time machine, in a way.
And what they did with those samples is pretty amazing. They used a technique called proteomics. Now, the best way to think about this is like forensic science for the body. The scientists are basically detectives, and they're sifting through a single drop of blood looking for thousands of different protein clues that might signal something is going wrong long before anyone feels sick.
And just to give you an idea of the scale here, they weren't just looking for 1 or 2 things. In every single blood sample, they analyzed 1,463 unique proteins. I mean, they cast this massive net to see what they could find.
So after combing through all that data, what did they find? Okay, this is where our detective story gets really good. Let's look at what the hunt turned up.
Okay, so in that first group from China, they flagged 4 protein suspects. Think of them as the first persons of interest in the investigation. These 4 showed a really strong link to a person later developing pancreatic cancer.
But here's the thing with good science, right? A finding is only truly reliable if you can find it again. It has to be replicated. So when they checked these 4 suspects against that massive second group in the UK, only 2 of them held up. The signals for REG1A and REG1B were confirmed. These were our prime suspects. And the signal they found was so telling. If you look at this graph, you can see how the risk level just climbs and climbs. The risk tied to these proteins gets way higher in the years right before a diagnosis. It's like an early warning system that gets louder and more urgent the closer you get to danger. So finding a link is a huge deal, but it brings up a really critical question. Are these proteins just innocent bystanders, showing up at the scene of the crime? Or are they actually part of the cause? The researchers had to figure this out.
To do that, they used this incredibly clever genetic tool called Mendelian randomization. It sounds complicated, but you can basically think of it as nature's own clinical trial. It uses our own genetic code to figure out if something is a cause of a disease, not just correlated with it.
So here's how it works, more or less. First, they find people who are just genetically wired to have higher levels of our suspect protein, say REG1A. Then, they check if those same people also have a higher genetic risk for pancreatic cancer. If the answer is yes, well, that's really strong evidence that the protein isn't just a bystander. It's likely involved in the process itself.
And that is exactly what they found. The analysis pointed to a potential causal role for both REG1A and REG1B. This is a huge step. It's the difference between saying, hey, these 2 things show up together, and hey, this thing might actually be causing the problem.
So what does this all mean for the future? We've got 2 super promising proteins that might even be part of the cause. Let's look at the road ahead and, the challenges that are still there. Honestly, the potential here is enormous. We're talking about these proteins being fantastic biomarkers for an early screening test. And beyond that, if they really are causal, they could become brand new targets for drugs. The bottom line, this could lead to way earlier intervention and could dramatically improve survival rates.
But, science is rarely a simple home run. The study is very clear about a key challenge: specificity. It turns out these same proteins are also elevated in people who later get lung and esophageal cancers. So a test could tell you something is up, but it might not be able to tell you exactly what cancer you're at risk for. That's a puzzle that still needs to be solved.
Still, the foundation of this research is just incredibly solid. And I want to leave you with this quote from the authors themselves. They point out that because they looked at data before anyone got sick, their findings are especially valid and reliable. They didn't just study people who already had cancer, they essentially looked into the future. Which, brings us right back to our big question. While there are still hurdles, for sure, this research opens up a very real, very exciting possibility. It gives us a clear path forward and strong evidence that, yeah, one day, a simple blood test really could predict and help us fight one of the world's deadliest cancers. And that is absolutely a future worth working towards.